Wakey, wakey. Two stories today. Really outrageous. We are being flanneled and scammed and given the mushroom treatment. You know what that is. That's being kept in the dark and fed on you know what. Of this, I am in no doubt. Our leaders are not being fair and honest and transparent with us, and they know that. Either that or they really, really don't get it, which is also a possibility. Either way, it's making me froth so much that the Met has banned me from going on public transport when I'm feeling like this, lest I explode and spray other passengers with Ghostbusters-style slime. And here's a thought, I'm not alone. Millions of people are tweeting Elon Musk to make the SpaceX spaceship available on a free basis for all of our politicians and all of the people at the Bank of England to take them to the moon. And another bit of news, apparently, on the charts of songs for swinging voters, number one this week is "Would You Go Home, Andrew Bailey? Would you please go home?" You know, there's just so much going on that people don't have the time to be discerning and to unpick the stories to find the actual truth. They just tune out. The first story involves interest rates. The Bank of England have raised them again, has raised them for the eighth time in 12 months. We've gone from 0.1% to 3%. And at the same time, they are disingenuously putting out announcements saying we're raising interest rates to bring inflation down. And we've got to stop spending. And if we stop spending and save more, then the inflation will decrease. And the way that these disingenuous, an affront to logic and intelligence communications are being worded is, I mean, I know the public isn't all that financially sophisticated, the general public, but they're like writing to a 6-year-old. It's really obnoxious. And of course, we aren't spending, are we? I mean, who's spending? Maybe if you earn 575,000 quid a year, as Andrew Bailey does, apparently you're spending too much. But many Britons, millions and millions, tens of millions of Britons probably, are choosing between, as they say, heating and eating. So within 12 months, they've gone from 0.1 to 3%, and it is crippling everybody. I mean, it's kind of like Andrew Bailey is known from the Financial Conduct Authority, where he was previously, and at the Bank of England, from having reacted too slowly to events and caused people allegedly to lose billions of pounds when he should have had his organizations act quicker. And here, whether that's the case or not, here, of course, we've been in low interest rates for 10 years or more. And what he should have done, and the people before him, is raise them gradually. It's kind of like an anti-vaxxer coming in and saying they've changed their mind about the COVID vaccine and they'd like some, and then giving them 4 shots, in 1 hour. It's insane. You just don't do things like that. So they're now trying to catch up when they should have acted more quickly to not let inflation get out of hand and rise to 10% instead of the 2% their brief is to keep it at. Now, at the same time as they announced the rate rise yesterday, they said, Mr. Bailey said, but don't you worry, because we're going to get control of inflation and it's going to come down next year. Well, he might as well claim credit for the next solar eclipse, because inflation is just going to peter out on its own. The same as it did between 2009 and 2012, when the Bank of England did not raise interest rates because they knew it was cost push inflation like we have today. In other words, inflation not driven by consumer demand, but by outside costs like materials and services, and exacerbated by Putin's Ukraine war. They did nothing, which is what should have happened here. What's going to happen now, even with inflation petering out sometime in the next couple of years, is that is going to kill, these rates are going to kill the property market, mortgages, generation rent. In other words, young people who can't afford to buy, who have to rent instead and now can't afford to rent. Some rents are increasing by as much as 40% in London since these Bank of England recent rate rises. And it's going to kill the entire equity release market for older people. So the older people are going to get hit in their pensions, as I'll come to in a moment. That's the second disaster story. And they're going to get hit because the equity in their house will diminish because of falling property prices. So if Rishi Sunak is going to prove himself, he needs to step in and reverse this. Because if not, I fear that the biggest fall in house value will be in the House of Commons. Now, the second story today is about the freeze on pension allowances. It's a bit complex and puts most people to sleep, which is why they're able to get away with this stuff, because people don't hold them accountable because it's so boring, frankly, isn't it? We are allowed to keep a pension pot. Originally, we could have as much as $1.8 million in that pot. The Tories have been chipping away at pensions since they got into power. It's a great stealth tax. What's a stealth tax? Stealth tax is where you don't raise the tax rate, but you move the goalposts. You widen the net so more people fall into the tax and they are more liable for more things. So you collect a whole lot more money, but you can still say, hey, we didn't raise taxes. So that's a stealth tax. Now, they've been doing that for years. And as part of that, that 1.8 million has descended to 1,073,000. That's how much money you can keep in your pension pot without paying tax on it when you withdraw it. But if you withdraw more than that, there is a swinging 55% tax on that. And even if you don't withdraw it, when you turn 75, there is a 25% tax on the excess over 1,073,000. So in other words, when you pull money out, you're paying 55% tax on everything you pull out over 1,073,000. And even if you don't pull it out, you're going to pay 25% on the same excess when you hit 75 years of age. Pardon me. Now, every year, that 1,073,000 figure is increased in line with the rise in prices, retail price index, whatever. Well, they've suspended that, and they've now extended it for another 2 years. And they've announced they're going to do that at the same time as they raise other taxes, raise capital gains tax, put VAT on electric cars. Hello? What Mandarin thought that one up? They should be turned into chop suey. I mean, why push electric cars and then put VAT on them? Anyway, they're going to do all these tax cutting, and at the same time, they're going to reduce our NHS, police, education, defense, 50-50. It'll be 50-50 tax cuts, tax increases, and 50-50 spending cuts, they say, in order to fill this horrific black hole of 50 billion pounds, which they have identified. That black hole was actually 70 billion pounds following Apocalypse Now and Kamikwaze's disastrous mini-budget when the international financial markets of the world dumped UK, but it's now come back down and settled at about 50 billion, they say. So the thing is that 50 billion pound black hole doesn't really exist, because a huge chunk of it is Rishi's insane desire to pay back the COVID debt as fast as possible so as not to burden the youth. Well, do the youth really care? And by the time he gets it paid back in a couple of years, if he actually manages to do that, the government will have borrowed for other things. So what's the point? It's just absolutely silly and completely divorced from reality. It took us 61 years to pay back the World War II debt. So what in the world is going on here? Why the rush to pay back the COVID debt and take it out of our pockets during a cost of living crisis like now? The other part of the black hole, which isn't really existing, is, as many experts say, the fact that they have linked since the 80s the price of electricity to gas prices. Now, electricity has very little to do with gas. Yesterday, only yesterday, just yesterday, the National Grid announced that some 80% of our electricity came from sources other than gas: wind, solar, nuclear, etc. So why do we pay many, many times more for our electricity? Because it's pegged to the international market price. It's tied to the international price of gas, which of course is being manipulated every hour by President Putin. Why are we doing that? This convention, which has that going on, was set back in the 80s when those industries were nationalized. And many people, Boris said it in June, John Penrose, the MP who invented the price cap, is a major advocate. So many people, Ofgem, the regulator, have been telling successive governments to uncouple, to decouple electricity from gas, and then this hole would disappear and our home energy bills would fall. 2/3 of our home energy bills are electricity, and 80% of that is priced wrongly on the price of gas and would drop tremendously if we didn't have to do that. But as with everything else, electricity, I mean, maybe today after the migrants, is the biggest topic, but here the government is still keeping us in the dark. With the migrants, if there wasn't, fighting and craziness out on the streets, we probably wouldn't hear about that either. But we're being kept in the dark about electricity. We are going to be taxed more and more and more by this high tax Tory government. We already have the highest taxes in Europe. And we are going to have all of our public services cut to fill a black hole that many experts and economists say does not need to be filled. And we're going to be further slammed by these interest rate rises, which thankfully now will taper off, even though Mr. Bailey says it'll be his doing. I don't think so. We're still going to be hit by these interest rate rises, which are not going to go back down, all at this terrible, terrible time. And it's frankly all too much. And I just think that if this government persists in that for much longer, people are going to become so upset that that will be the end of the story for the Tory party for a long time to come. Roger and out.